Hello, guys. Today we're back again with the continuation. Excuse me for my hair being a mess. The continuation of the war of the Second Green Tan War Part Two. Since it's been a while since I've done it, and I know you guys have been watching my Iron Man review videos, so I'm going to get this done today. So from where we left off, the Allies are now focusing their invasions and their counteroffensives on Tenyo to help liberate Tenyo and nations that have been conquered or are to the brink of being surrendered or to the brink of surrender and maybe occupation. So we're going to start off from there right now. Franz Deinheimer heard about the failure of the defenses in Gurtgen Forest and decided to hold his last stand in the city of Gutsburg in order the remaining soldiers he had to not surrender, and those who were caught surrendering would be executed. The Greenlandians arrived near the city and began to do a mortar bombardment to weaken the resistance a little bit within the city. Then the troops were sent in to capture Franz, but were met by fierce resistance from the remaining Grey Army, which resulted with the first wave of troops being demolished. Then, as soon as the gunfire ceased, the Moors once again unleashed a second run on the city, and were once again ordered to silence their fire. The second wave were sent and still fought a few members of resistance, but resulted in a few soldiers dropping their weapons and surrendering, along with finally capturing the leader and his few soldiers, along with liberating the captured natives of the Barracan territory in Pacifica. Franz surrendered unconditionally, which means, and since his nation was conquered and held, the allies of the Great Tonian Empire surrendered as well, which means that the Tasmanian and since his nation was conquered and held, the allies of the Great-Tonian Empire and the remaining of the Great-Tonian Empire allies of the Great-Tonian Empire surrendered as well, which means that the Tasmanian Empire are left on their own. Hirohito wasn't afraid of the Greenland and their allies and decided to launch their attack on Manghai before they reland and send troops to Tenyo, and also give the final order of his soldiers to not surrender to the enemy until the empire itself had fallen. The Tasmanians launched their attack twice on the city, but had no success in taking over Vermont. The failure of uniting Willant under their rule has failed. The failure of uniting Willant under their rule has proven to be ineffective. Has resulted in defeat. And now Hirohito relies on defending the colonies he has left to preserve his empire. The allied nations, meanwhile, have gathered together to construct a plan on how to put an end to the Tasmanian Empire. The Allies have decided to attack the Tasmanian Empire on multiple fronts, and this operation was called Operation Annihilation. The goal of this operation was to weaken the Tasmanian Imperial Army and defeat it so they could continue world peace. The week is almost over, and the nations are ready to execute their plan within 2 weeks. The nation of Tasmania and their allies were gathered in the city of Kanoi, Condas, to discuss plans of defense against their enemies. Hirohito decides to hold defense within their home country since he knew the enemies would try to attack him first. Qin Hun suggests also holding defense in their country too, just in case the Morantian loyalists change their mind and join the Allies to attack his nation. Chakan suggests holding his defense on his own country too, because they don't want their land to be conquered by anyone if they were to fight elsewhere. The Allies, meanwhile, have already discussed their strategies and plans to execute Operation Annihilation. So we're now going to continue. So just give me a few minutes. I'm trying to finish up the war pretty quickly. So let me find it real quick. Alright, so let's continue with the final part. The Allies' plan of strategy is that they would take on the Tasmanian Empire by splitting their armies to take on different targets. The first plan was to let Lumiere of Kandahar send a letter to Tainarea asking for their help, and if that plan fails, then they would try to take them head on. If the first plan is successful, then they would begin their operation and win the war, along with the help of Tainarea. Lumiere has started to write the letter and is waiting for the response from Tainarea, which the message came, and now Lumiere is setting up a meeting with the nations to discuss the news. The reply message came. Excuse me. Reply message came, and now Lumiere is setting up a meeting with the nations to discuss the news. The leaders came to the meeting and managed to persuade the Tsaress of Tainarea to join the war, which was a good step to begin the operation from the Allies' point of view. The battle plans are split into three parts. The first part involves with Tainarea, Ukraine, and Basaja. Their mission is to push the enemy forces out of northern Morlant and rescue the Morlantian soldiers that were influenced by Tasmania, along with capturing Condust. The second plan is the invasion of Tannan, which would involve the nations of the Salapines and Australia. Then the third and final plan, which would be the invasion of Tasmania, which would involve Lutopia, Greenland, and Greentopia. Since it has been a week, the soldiers of each allied nation are ready to act out their plan, and as for the Tainarians, Ukrainians, and Basajans, they were ready to go on the offensive. Go on the offensive, which will start tomorrow. The three armies managed to push the Condustians towards the capital city and have recovered some codebooks for the Allies to use to intercept radio messages from within the Tasmanian Empire. The Australians have already sent their ships towards the Salapines to prepare their launch on Tannan once Condust has fallen. The Basajans and the Tainarians have managed to capture the city of Kanoi and have the leader of Condust captured. And since they made Condust surrender, they told the Allied forces on the Salapines that their mission needs to start now. The Salapinos and Australians managed to reach their location on time and take the beachhead of Tanland and five prisoners. They are now waiting on reinforcements from Greenland to continue their assault on Tanland and then launch their final attack on Tasmania. The reinforcements from Greenland arrived and helped their allies set up defenses and tents. The Tanlandians are about to launch an offensive against the Allied armies on their land, which they would launch at night, which they would attack at night. Evening arrived, and the Tanlandians snuck towards the Allied camp quietly. Then they began to launch their attack, but the Allies were prepared and ready for them. And within a few minutes of gunfire and artillery, the Tanlandians retreated, resulting with the Allies holding the ground firmly. The leader of Tanland, Chakan Setong, orders the remaining soldiers to prepare defenses in the city of Tangok. And if they ended up on their last rounds of ammunition, then they would do a suicidal attack to preserve their honor and glory to the Tasmanian Empire. The Tanlandian troops were ready, and once their enemies arrived, they began to open up their guns, and as the fight for the city continued, casualties began to pile, and once the army had enough, they chose to surrender even though a quarter of their men was killed. Chakan and his generals were also captured along with the soldiers to be taken to Greenland to be imprisoned and wait till the war was over to decide their fate. Hirohito was upset that his empire was coming to an end, and all he can do now is hold out till he thinks it is time to surrender. The Allies were ready for their final attack on Tasmania, and a new plan was made for the attack. Instead of sending troops like they originally planned, they wanted to bomb the two cities of Hiroshima and Takasaki. Since most of Tasmania's supplies were made and distributed there, and the bomb that they were going to launch would soon end the war. President Leon began to send the missiles to the Philippines to launch them on Tasmania, which would take 4 days. The missiles finally arrived last night, The missile finally arrived last night and had been sent for their launch the next morning. Morning came and the Lear Greenland, President Leon gave the order to launch the nukes. The nukes were launched and they waited for the results. Meanwhile, on Tanzania, the army were guarding the positions and the civilians in the cities were doing their casual daily jobs until they heard a sound that they would never forget. As the sound drew closer, everyone was wondering what it was, and then an explosion came, and a massive sonic wave spread out, and another explosion was heard. Then the civilians ran for cover, and others tried to hide, but it was too late. A few minutes after the explosions, the devastation of the cities was seen, and many were found dead. Emperor Hirohito heard about what happened and could only feel the fear of his people experiencing the damage and death caused by those missiles, and since a quarter of his population was killed, he had decided to surrender. Greenlands were thinking that their plan didn't work, but then a call came through the radio, and it was Hirohito's voice. The men gathered to hear what he said, and by the sound of his voice, the soldiers knew that their plan worked, and told the president that Tanzania had surrendered. Leon was glad that the nation surrendered, but wasn't proud of the way things had to be in order to accomplish that victory. Hirohito arrived in the nation of Greenland to meet with Leon and the other leaders to discuss terms of peace. Alright guys, so that is finally the final part of the war, and we're going to get to the resolution tomorrow. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and see you guys next time.